Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Finance and Accounting Show. And today I have another great guest on, and we're going to talk about the 5 fundamental financial elements that every business owner needs to know. So stay tuned. Welcome to another episode of the Finance and the Accounting Show. This is the place to go for small business owners. If you're looking for a great way to understand the finance and the accounting side of your business, you're in the right place. So stay tuned and enjoy the episode. So welcome back, and without further ado, let me bring my guest, Ed Patton. And welcome to the show, Ed.
Thank you, Terrell. Terrell, I appreciate you having me here.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Now, before we jump into, the 5 fundamental financial elements, can you tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how did you get into starting your firm?
That's a good question. My background started off with just traditional accounting background. Went to the University of Texas, graduated, went to work at accounting firms, worked for Peat Marwick Mitchell back then, Big 8, they're now Big 4. So did that for a while, then went into, I worked for a client of mine as a controller. And then from there, moved to San Antonio and went to work for an investment banking firm there. And so what that really means is I've been both a generator of financial information and I've been a consumer of financial information. On the investment banking side, we did a lot of traditional things there was all small to mid-sized businesses, buying businesses, selling businesses, raising debt money, raising equity money. So through that process, I had to use the financial information. So it's been a good background. It's been a good background to be both seeing how the financial information is generated and then how it's used. And so that got me started along these lines. And there's a common theme, and I've always worked with small to mid-sized businesses, which are in the range of early stage, could be startup up to 100 million in sales. And so if there was a common theme, it was probably a lot of y'all will recognize this. People really did not have their arms around the full financial profile of the business. And they didn't have it not because they couldn't understand it, just because it wasn't being provided to them. And so when I left the investment banking firm, I was going to go out and help businesses determine or know and convey to them what their financial fundamentals are. And then once I started that process, I realized I really didn't know what financial fundamentals were. So that kind of started me on this journey of defining what they are, being able to calculate them and convey them, and do it in an efficient manner that it can be replicated each month, so that people can have it all the time.
Wow, that is quite the amazing history. I mean, one of the things that you pointed out that I want to revisit, where you talked about being on the side of creating the financial statements and then being on the side of using the financial statements.
Correct.
I often wonder, how many accountants or finance professionals have had the privilege of working on both sides of that.
Terrell, I think that's right. I think it's fairly unique. So it's been a good background, and I think that's one of the key issues there, that those that are generating the information really don't understand how it needs to be used, and really how it needs to be comprehended by laymen. The decision makers at these businesses are not financial people. Even if they are, they still don't fully have their arms around the financial fundamentals. And so I shouldn't say that in absolute terms. Probably some do, but there's a huge majority that do not.
Mm-hmm. And I've probably I've seen the same thing, because for me I started off in public accounting similar path, and it wasn't until I took a role in investor relations where I had to see our financial statements through the eyes of the Wall Street analysts and how they were looking at it. And I was just like, oh wow, this is a whole new way to look at it.
No, it's a different world, isn't it? Now, but it's great having that accounting background to kind of know where the numbers come from, the depth of what's underneath the numbers and all that. So it's a great background.
Mhm. Absolutely. I totally agree. And I guess as you kind of transition from, because there's some people who watch the show where, they're debating about that. Should I move from public accounting into industry? Like, how was that experience for you going from working in public accounting to now working as a controller?
Well, it's all different. It's all different steps. And, fortunately looking back, I always tell people that, young people that, you can do a change of job or a change of career or where you are, as long as you're learning something. And that's fortunately, each of those processes, I kept learning something. I didn't have an overall plan, but, kind of, you put the whole ball of wax together and you look at it and goes, okay, it kind of looks like something. And so I think, you've got to pursue your dreams or your passions. And as long as you're learning something, you're probably headed in the right direction.
Mhm. Awesome. Now, so as
And
we
again, I'm not
talk
sure
about,
I answered your question. So, please ask more if I didn't answer your question.
no, I think that was a great answer. I mean, because it's one of those things that I've heard, some people that make that switch from public accounting to industry have said is like, it's going to be a learning process. It's just prepare
Right.
yourself to learn.
Right. No. Well, Troy, I bet you talk about learning process. Really, that's the good news. I'm sure with all of your clients, you learn something. There's something different and new. But of course, you're then able to use that with other people you work with.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I guess speaking of that learning, like as you kind of talked about, at one point you weren't completely sure you understood the financial fundamentals. Like, how was that experience for you having to admit that knowing you had an accounting background, but you still didn't know?
Well, that's a good question, and it was painful. I mean, we as CPAs. By the way, I'm no longer an official CPA because I don't keep up with continuing education. But we all think we know everything there is to know about the financial side of the business, and I really thought I did. I mean, again at that point when I went on my own, I had been in the accounting side, the generator of financial information, and the consumer. And I thought the next step would be easy. And it's a whole different story when you're sitting down with a business owner, explaining to them what their monthly, what their monthly results were. And you're having to do that in a short period of time and in a concise manner. And I realized I stumbled. I mean, it was hard. I can remember talking to one of my early on clients who turned out to be a client for in excess of 10 years till they had a really successful audit, an exit, they sold to a British company. But we were going over cash flow, and I remember he looked at me and he said, I'm confused. And I looked at him and said, I'm confused too. And I thought, God dang it, if I'm not going to be in this business very long, if my clients are confused and I'm confused, that's not a very, very good, very good formula for success. And so anyway, you just keep working the problem, and eventually came up with a way to figure it out. And again, it's a lot of trial and error, but it's always just trying to make it better. And that's how you get there.
I don't think that's amazing because, that similar experience, I think, began to happen to me when I was working at General Electric and I had engineers asking me questions, and I realized I don't know how to explain this to them.
And Terrell, what I work with small to mid-sized businesses. I convey their financial results to them each month, and again, this thing has evolved and improved over many, many years. But that's the good thing about each month, each time you're talking to somebody, you learn something new. And also as an aside, I kind of made up what I call the 15-minute rule, and that is you have 15 minutes a month to explain the results to the decision makers, what happened the prior month. And it doesn't mean that they can't stop and ask questions and drill down, but if you start taking too long, their eyes are going to glaze over and you're going to lose them. So you've got to be, hit it hard, hit them with what's important, and then let them make sure they understand it.
Mhm. And I think that is amazing. So let's talk a little bit more of like, as you started to think through the fundamentals, did you go in thinking like, okay, all right, how do I boil this down to 5? Or did you start thinking through it and you just ended up with 5?
The answer is I ended up with 5, and I went through and started trying to figure out what's really important, and so it just turned out to be 5, and it's cash flow, operating earnings, financial health, the value of the business, and borrowing capacity, and those are 5, and so. I kept looking at it and thinking about it. And again, this is a lot of trial and error over a period of time. And then I realized that if you understand those 5, you'll be able to recognize and then start to resolve and pick a number. These are numbers I'm picking out. I don't have any science behind it. 95% of the financial issues that arise in a business. So it just turns out if you know those 5. And what I do, I tell people that I can convey those to you. You'll know what's driving them and what their trends are. So if you have that background, you're gonna be in pretty darn good shape of recognizing financial items and then put together a plan to resolve them if it's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I absolutely love it because I do think that those are very, very critical parts of, like I said, being able to break down the financial puzzle of a business.
Yeah, no, and also a quote I like to use is simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And so, and Steve Jobs used to like to use that a lot with Apple. And if you think about, an Apple phone it's so simple, and it didn't become simple. It wasn't easy to get it that way, and I can remember when I got my first Apple phone, I just thought, oh, God dang, I don't want to go through the learning process and getting it all set up. And I went to the store and it's in a box, and you open the box and turned it on and poof, it's working. And so it was great. And so anyway, just trying to keep everything simple.
No, I think that is a very important one because it's often when, I count it a privilege when I come across like other accounting and finance professionals that can explain a complicated topic in a simple way to where, some people look at that on the outside and they're like, oh, that was easy. Like, no, it was simple, but it wasn't easy.
No, that's exactly right. Well, good.
Awesome. So when it comes down to your firm, how do you usually work with your clients and kind of what does that relationship look like?
Well, it's let me try to answer that as best I can. It says, first of all, it's a monthly touch. It's a quality monthly touch with the decision makers, and the information is built off of it's an Excel template, and it's just taking their existing current balance sheets and P&Ls each month, and then it condenses it down to a few lines, and then puts it into this template, which generates the information, and so. Anyway, so it took some time to figure out how to do that to make it where it's replicable and it's easy to use, and the outputs are simple. And so, from that, I'll tell you what the outputs are first. There's a 3-page report. There's 1 page, which is, I'll just call the financial report card. And it's the 5 elements, and it has 3 months in there so you can see trends. And it's just a simple grading, and these are subjective grades by me, but it's A, B, C, D, F, like we used to get in school. I don't know how they grade people in school anymore, and so you get to see in there, the 5 elements and how you did this month, and then there's a 2-page report that has a graph of each of the elements, and then there's a space in there to write down just a few words of what are the important parts of that each of those elements. So. That's the output, and then there's some more drill down in depth to reports and graphs after that. But that's the primary report, and so the relationship is monthly meetings with the clients either on the phone, haven't sent them the PDFs of these reports, or it's in person. And so just going through the fundamentals with them. And so just, they like having this information because they hadn't had it before and they realize it's important. So, it's just a good way to, keep in front of and keep them apprised of what's going on financially.
Mhm. And I think that's amazing because, it's something to be, I would say, said about like, like the old grading scale system. When I was in school, we went through the A through F scale as well. Like I have no idea. I think when I was talking to someone once, and they were telling me their GPA was like a 4.5, and I was like, how is that possible? I thought a 4 was so I'm with you. I don't know how the grading scale looks now, but it was one of those helpful things of like when you got to see that grade, it kind of gave you an idea on, hey, am I good or bad? Like, how am I doing? And I think, business owners that you work with probably greatly appreciate being able to get a score and see how they're trending over time.
You're right. And again, you can always then drill down for more depth, but make sure you see the big picture first.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So now, if someone is interested in doing business with you, or like, hey, I would love to get, to get Ed's help on helping me implement the 5 fundamentals, where can they find you guys online, or how can they get in touch with you?
It's I've got a website. The best thing to do is a website. It's pattontrender.com. And by the way, I call them trenders because my clients they can see the trends, and they're the ones that named it the trenders. They always said, are the monthly trenders out yet? Can I send my bank the trenders? All this kind of stuff. So that's where the name came from. And so it's Patton Trender without an S.com. And on there's a way to contact me and a phone number on there as well. So I think that's the best way to get a hold of me.
Awesome. I absolutely love it. And like I said, as soon as you hit the page, you see the 5 fundamentals right up front. So I love it.
Okay. Well, thanks. So, well, good. I appreciate it.
Well, before we wrap up, one last question I always like to ask every guest that comes on. I mean, when you think about your journey and you think about, where you are now, what's 2 pieces of advice that you would share with other business owners?
That's a great question. And one, I'll say, let me go from the technical financial side. Understand your business's your business's financial fundamentals, or be able to convey it to your clients. And then the other's sort of a more personal note, and that is, have an inner circle that you can trust, that will help you. And they don't have to be business people necessarily, but it's people that are interested in what you're doing. They're curious about what you're doing, and they're smart. And you can trust them. And so I think just having an inner circle that you can talk to is just always helpful. We all run into roadblocks and all that. It's just good to have somebody to talk to about it.
Awesome. Well, Ed, thank you so much for being an amazing guest, coming on the show, sharing your wisdom, your insight, and really diving into the 5 fundamentals. So Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I think you're doing a great job. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Finance and Accounting Show. If you like what you heard, don't be selfish. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and then share this with a friend, because you know a business owner that could definitely use this insight. So be sure to hit that subscribe button, share it with a friend, and turn on the notification bell so you get all the updates when we release a new episode.